Vamos a ver.
So what if I brought the world to me?
Pero este no es el que veíamos nosotros, ¿no?
I'm going to recreate every biome on Earth.
A ver.
Now building the biomes is the easy part. Adding in the animals is a lot more complicated.
Está guapo esto, ¿eh? ¡Go!
There are 12 biomes I need to create, and I'm going to start with the desert. I'll need dirt, sand, rock, and a bunch of cacti.
Me flipa esas mierdas, ¿eh?
Ow!
Cuando me retire voy a ser youtuber de esto.
Maybe I should get gloves. So the desert was the easiest biome to build. I have the perfect animal for this setup. His bite is said to be more painful than a bullet, 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 than a bullet. You know what? I'd rather save him for later. How about something more friendly? Meet Mo, Larry, and Curly. And they're all playing dead. These are blue death feigning beetles. And they should wake back up in 3, 2, 1. There you go. These guys are completely harmless, unlike many of the animals to come. So with the desert complete, let's move on to the grassland. Thankfully, there are no cactus.
Pero lo hacen en plan chiquito. Los del otro me molan más, ¿eh? También aquí tienes que crear una. Lo del otro mola porque se tira 90 días ahí como evoluciona. Está guapísimo.
Grassland is complete. Now it's time for some audience participation. What insect will live here? Is it A, a jumping spider, B, an orchid mantis, or C, my mother-in-law? Well, a spider isn't an insect, and my mother-in-law wouldn't fit, so the correct answer is B, an orchid mantis. She is dangerously beautiful. Her legs are shaped like flower petals, and her claws are covered in razor-sharp spines. Let's give this ambush predator something to hunt.
Los diferentes tipos que hay, todo.
Now that she is eating, I am ready to move on to the arid shrubland. I am going to need quite a bit of rock. Many of them are way too big, which is why I have one more trick up my sleeve.
Se para ver ese tío.
This is much better. Time for a dramatic montage.
Yo hubiera sido cazabichos Pokémon, no creo.
Oh my god, I think I just got sand in my eye. Oh.
Sí, Draco, hemos hablado de ello hace un momento.
It is the ideal climate for a red-kneed tarantula. She can fire toxic hairs into your eyes and lungs. Now to move her into the tank, I was going to need a pair of gloves.
Claro, pero solo mete un par de bichillos, ¿no? A ver, es mini, ¿no?
But that didn't stop me. I gently lowered her into her new home, where she can live for over 30 years. With that biome done, it is time to move on to the next two biomes, the ocean and lake. And I have a feeling the lake will be
a mí no me da asco esto, gente. Me mola. Hay algunos bichos que me dan respeto.
I added a tiny filter in each aquarium. The only thing left to do is add in the animals. I put a few tiny cherry shrimp into the lake and then added some hermit crabs into the ocean. With the lake and ocean complete, I am ready to move on to the swamp. The most important part of this
a ver qué va a hacer aquí un pantano, loco, a ver.
Wait, that's all I have left? Looks like I'm gonna have to travel deep into the unknown. Alright, that should be more than enough. So with the power of editing, the build is complete. It is the perfect home for a Pac-Man frog.
Pues mola.
As long as he doesn't jump off my hand, he should be fine. So let's move on, shall we, to the savannah. For this build, I really want to recreate this photo. Oh, no, I meant this one. I'll need to find some tall grass. That's a pretty good haul, and with the clap of my hands... Wait, what? There we go.
La edición es buena,
The only thing that was missing is the zebra. So I got the next best thing, a zebra isopod, and his extended family. Oh, they're going everywhere. Time to add them in. I finished all the easy animals, but now we can move on to the more dangerous ones. So I'll start by building the forest, which will be home to Cupcake. Oh no. I have no idea how this thing is even legal. Wait, is it dead? Oh, she's definitely not dead. Alright, I probably should have built your tank first. Don't go anywhere. It looks perfect. Unlike... I'm going to try to pick her up. Now you might think this is a bad idea, and so do I. She uses 2 powerful claws to crush her prey and a stinger to finish them off. But in the dark, she reveals her unique ability to glow. Come to think of it, she's way too big for this tank. So I got her baby instead.
Un pequeño. Espérate.
Welcome to your own little
¿Qué ha pasado?
world.
Pero si era gigante, ¿qué ha pasado? No sé, espérate un momento.
Dark, she reveals her unique ability to glow.
Ahora se necesita
Come
un
to think
máster
of it,
para usar
she's
el
way
braille.
too
Claro, no me he dado cuenta, digo, es que esto, digo, ya.
for this tank. So I got her baby instead.
Sí, sí, no, lo del Prime, hostia.
Welcome to your own little world, buddy. And with his home complete, I am ready to move on to the mesa. The animals living here will be the most dangerous so far.
Está bonito, ¿no?
Not too shabby. This will be home to the cow killer. She has the 4th most painful sting in the animal kingdom. The venom is so strong, it is said that it could kill a cow. And I have 5 of them. Using these tweezers, I have to carefully move them very slow and slow and slow and... oh no. Okay. Then a bullet.
¿Qué acabo de hacer? Pensaba que... Un momento. ¡Qué locura! Le acabo de dar yo al botón sin querer, mientras estoy comiendo, y parecía edición del vídeo. Digo, parecía como que le había picado, hostia, en mi cabeza. Escucha, escucha, escucha. No, 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 no. Claro, digo, hostia, le ha picado y está rebobinando el vídeo como, esto no debía pasar, ¿verdad? ¿A que sí? ¡Qué locura! ¿Y dónde estamos ahora?
The most for this build, I wrap up my... so I move on to the... oh, I'm... and a stinger to living here.
¿Dónde era aquí? ¡Qué locura!
It is said that it could kill a
Clip forzado, sí, claro, por la cara.
I have 5 of them. Using these tweezers, I have to carefully move them very slow and slow and slow and... oh no.
Aquí, aquí. Cuando cae, la cae de puta madre.
Okay, deep breath. Let's just move you. Okay, that was easy. With everyone safe and sound, I'm ready to move on to the mountain. I'm going to keep this build short. What? Oh, you've got to be kidding me. How in the world did that get there?
Se viene promo de algo.
Okay, one last try. This deep terrain is the perfect home for a pink-toed tarantula. Do not under...
A ver, Yuki, qué pesada, vamos. Las que ya... O sea, lo de Yuki es histórico, El por culo que da para entrar, se tira 2 minutos y miau, me quiero volver. Joder, duro.
underestimate her size because she has a superpower. This entire time, she has been walking upside down. Her movement is slow and graceful. Or not. How about you just make yourself at home? In the meantime, I can move on to the most dangerous build of them all, the jungle, which is the perfect home for a giant centipede. I have to work quickly because he will not stop trying to escape. Building the enclosure is the easy part. It is the next step that I'm so worried about. To move him, I am going to need a lot more than a pair of gloves.
Does this make me look fat?
He is extremely aggressive, but what if I
Humor Marvelita.
use that to my advantage? Here is a cockroach, and maybe if he will just grab on... There we go, alright. Let's just gently lift you into there. Amazing. I'm never doing that again. So with the
Eso te
jungle
mata a
finished,
Ace, ese bicho.
I have now completed every single biome except for one, the most difficult of them all. The Arctic.
Hostias.
Okay, and with that, the Arctic is complete. I'll see you in the
¿Es
next.
gilipollas o qué? Anda. Ahí es bueno, ¿eh? Gente.
Within this tank
No.
lives on algae
¿Dónde está el que veíamos nosotros? Que estaba guapísimo, que es de ese estilo.
and keeping it at bay.
Estos son
To
buenísimos.
understand the
Estos
mystery
son la polla. ¿Cuál era? ¿El que veíamos nosotros?
I actually did it, and I must say,
A ver esto. Esto es una fumada, ¿no?
I'm quite proud of the outcome. Within this over 1,000-gallon tank is my magnum opus, and in my heart, I feel it is one of the greatest things I've ever created in my entire
¿Sois subnormales o qué?
Canal de N2, Ryan. Yo soy Hannah.
¿Qué hacéis?
life. I'm going to show it to you, but I must say, constructing it has been an adventure and a half.
Esto es una
full
locura,
of
¿no?
twists, turns, heartbreaks, and triumphs. But the utter biological
No,
beauty
pero el que me flipaba a mí es el que veíamos. Porque se flipaba el tío, quemaba las cosas. No, ha venido un no sé qué, pum, se quema todo, no. Y ahora de las cenizas vuelve la vida. Y salía, ese era buenísimo, ¿eh? Ese era God, ¿eh? Este es God también.
of it all made it worth the journey. In celebration of recently hitting 5 million subs on this channel,
No me jodas, un momento.
Hace 100 días, este bosque no era más que un cementerio.
Pero un momento. Ah, que este tío...
100 days ago,
Ah, me estás vacilando. Es el mismo canal, pero ¿es uno en español y otro en inglés o qué? ¿Qué cojones? Hace la de MrBeast. Buah.
this new
Es el
tropical
mismo canal, entonces.
world of ours within glass will
Vas
serve
dejado,
us
no,
a
coño,
very
¿qué es?
special purpose
Oye,
in the world
¿ves?
of science. And I'll explain how it all came together in this crazy story of how I created a living, mist-breathing cloud rainforest within glass. Part 4 of my Ultimate Ecosystem series, which I dedicate to all of you. Welcome to the Ants Canada Ant Channel.
Pues mola, ¿no?
Please subscribe to my channel.
Lo pongo en inglés mejor. Es que esta traducción es rara, ¿eh?
Bell icon. Welcome to the AC fam. Enjoy. I knew creating a giant cloud rainforest vivarium Incorporating a ton of tropical animals, plants, bacteria, and fungi was no easy task. I mean, I'm no god, but as your creator of worlds on this channel, I knew successfully pulling off an ecosystem terrarium, which was the main objective of this giant cloud rainforest build, would require me to apply all the knowledge and experience
Estos
I've
vídeos están
acquired
muy
over
guapos,
a lifetime, beyond just ants, but of biology, animal husbandry, terrarium building, aquaria, etc. So even prior to the actual building of the
Me
tank
gustan
unit,
los
I
acuarios
have
a
been
mí, loco.
studying and planning non-stop. Dare I say obsessed? Day and night to make sure all
Hay uno en YouTube que crea terrarios a partir de agua de charcos y cosas así. Se ve cómo surge la vida. Eso está guapo, loco.
details of this rainforest build were covered. If you haven't seen the past 3 episodes of this series, which was largely a research phase and a crowdsourcing of your ideas, I've placed the playlist link in the description so you could check out those episodes after watching this episode. But when the team that I had commissioned to build the initial tank unit arrived this week,
El cactus...
my
yo tengo un cactus, Espero que no se me ahogue como el otro. ¿Dónde está?
Jeje,
¿Está por aquí? El que murió, no, es otro. Este está bien. ¿Dónde? A ver, el otro se murió porque me calenté. Pero aquí está.
Grande padre, tienes una vibra anclovin con 41, te quiero mucho.
Mírate este canal, el tío hace unas fumadas de restauración de consolas y cosas antiguas. Esas movidas molan también, ¿no? Pero no me carga, loco. Vemos esto un ratillo mientras. A ver esto, en modo acuario, ¿qué es esto? Gambas para acuario de agua dulce.
Un gambario puede resultar ser tan atractivo y adictivo.
Cállate la boca.
heart was racing a million miles a minute. This was it. No more planning now. It was time to execute and build the ultimate vivarium.
El vivero
Animals
definitivo.
and plants were waiting on standby to be introduced to their new kingdom. Once I was done, my ant tanks had to be moved around in a game of musical ant farms to accommodate the new gargantuan setup that was about to become part of the Antiverse. Volcania, my fire ant setup, had to be drained of water and lugged to an opposite wall. I actually liked it better here. The Leviathans, my marauder ants,
Qué guapo,
and
un
their
dragón,
dragon
loco. Está guay,
setup that used to be there had to be moved closer to a window. Beside the
¿Hablaste de
blades of
Dragon's
Midas,
Dogma?
my
Sí,
spiny ant
antes hemos
setup,
hablado.
my trapjaw ants had to be moved to another window. Where
Ahora
it
sí se
looked
jugamos
much
un
neater.
ratillo, ¿o qué?
Anyway, the base of the setup
A ver, ¿o
looked
apetece?
sturdy and was huge. The entire thing was about 10 feet long. Everything would be held together by frames, silicone, and glass. It took the team the entire day to finish it, but when they did, laying eyes on the empty tank in the ant room was such an experience.
Boom.
I've never before had nor designed a tank this huge.
Arlechino no.
Walking up to it was a dream. I was in
Ya no juega al
awe
Genshin.
and felt like an athlete the night before the Olympics. I knew all my terrarium building skills would be stretched to their limit with this one, and all culminated to this sole terrarium. Let me show you the specs of this tank. To get in, you have to go through the back via 2 glass panels which swing open. The terrarium would be housing a lot of life, and I didn't want things escaping all over the place whenever I needed to get in, so this was the best way in my mind. I also wanted a full unobstructed view of the front, so I chose for no doors there. I knew I would be needing some good space at the top for lighting and climate equipment, so I had an upper compartment created to house all the lights and gear. Speaking of climate equipment, I also knew ventilation was key, particularly for the animals I had in mind for the vivarium. So I had the side
No, no estoy
made with
reformado
an
con él,
opening
estoy jugando
door
con Kai.
with mesh for ventilation. The top of the tank, of course,
A ver,
was
casa
also
de
mesh.
psicópata no,
Now,
coño,
before
es que te
starting
monta ahí esa
any
weá.
terrarium build, I always visualize what the final result would look like. I began to trace the general shape of what I wanted the vivarium to look like in my mind.
Vale, ¿vas a empezar a hacer algo o qué? Ya media hora
I
aquí
even
con el
drew a
puto cristal,
sketch
joder.
several weeks ago,
Ya sé por qué dura
before I
media hora
wanted
el
it to.
vídeo, loco.
For me, this visualization phase is imperative before actually building. because it would help inform all my aesthetic choices made during the building process, which you will see later. The tank was empty now, but I could see it
Te está llevando por el proceso
already
creativo,
done
weón.
in my mind.
Me gusta ver los bichillos y eso,
It was late, so tomorrow would be building day. But little did I know, this terrarium building process
¿Cuándo
would turn out
enseñan
to
el
be
cadáver?
harder than expected and wouldn't go as planned. The first thing I needed to do was silicone a wall. I wanted the vivarium to have a water portion, so that wall separating the water from the land needed to be set in place. But before that, I needed to prep the rock wall. And for that, I'd like to introduce to you what has become my best friend throughout this entire rainforest building journey. This was the real MVP. It's terrarium scaping foam. It was my first time using it. It's by a
Esto es una D de libro, ya te lo digo yo.
company named Dimax, #not sponsored, but it's basically a
No es
biological
sponsor, una polla, ¿no?
safe
Dice que
glue
no, que no es sponsor.
for gluing tank decor.
Es raro que enseñes estas cosas si no te pagan. Delante de 1 millón y pico de peñas, ¿sabes?
In place. I decided to give it a try and began to use it to glue sphagnum moss to the back of our rock wall. To my surprise, it worked like a charm. I just sprayed the stuff onto the moss, and sure enough, the foamy glue stuck the rock moss to the rock wall like a charm. When this was done, we carried the entire thing, which weighed a ton, into the tank, where I proceeded to silicone it at these long brackets. This is what the rock wall looked like from the front. It would soon become the coolest rock wall ever when we were done with it. Now that the rock wall was in place, I could better judge where to silicone our water barrier wall, and I began to silicone that into place.
A ver, es que montar
Next
esa
up,
cacharra
from
es
rock
grande,
wall
¿sabes?
To a moss wall.
Va a tardar.
Wait until you guys see this. I measured out the piece of stainless steel chicken wire I'd be needing for this epic moss wall. When cut to size, I began to cover it with dried sphagnum moss, using the scaping foam. When it was done, I set it in place. And guys, now for the real star of this terrarium build, the tree stump. Oh man. Now when building a terrarium, I always choose one item to be the main star of the show, so to speak. One central piece of landscape decor that would steal focus and have everything around it revolve. The star for this tank was this tree stump. In my initial sketch idea, the main star in my mind would be the branches. So for weeks, I kept my eyes open for some interesting looking branches to play that role. That was until I spotted the tree stump. It was in my neighbor's front yard, and I drooled when I saw it. I asked my neighbor if I could have it, seeing as it was already dead and was useless. And to my surprise, he said yes. We had to chop it from the ground. The thing was
De su vecino, dice el cabrón. Este hijo puta, la que ha liado ahí en el bosque.
massive. So massive that it actually didn't fit in the tank when we first tried to install it. We each took turns hacking away at the back of it.
No,
to
a
make
ver,
it fit.
alguien se cree que eso es del vecino, que una polla como una olla, vaya. Pero ¿qué te va a decir, coño? Que la habrá cogido de otro lado, pero...
And let me tell you, whatever this
Que
wood
salga el
was,
vecino y se lo dé en la mano, a ver si es verdad.
it was iron solid. It took forever to chop it to size. Once amply chopped down, we lugged the unwieldy stump into place. The idea was to have it sit a bit higher, so I had a wooden stool ready to become its great throne within the setup. Then I wanted the tree stump to be tilted to the right and leaned up against the moss wall, holding the moss wall in place. And there it was, looking so pretty.
A mí el musgo, no
A
sé,
tree stump.
el musgo está guapo, loco. Aquí había musgo en el jardín y me decía, qué asco, es que el musgo es asqueroso, tal. Está guay, loco.
Stump King, with its attractive mossy cape, ready to steal the show. I siliconed one side of the moss wall into place and allowed the entire thing to dry overnight. I also
¿Guay
siliconed
de
the other
qué?
side of
Me
the
parece
water
que está guay, mola. Está bonito, no sé.
wall. And that was the end
Mientras no estuviera en la nevera, obviamente.
of day one. All silicone needed to dry now before the next step. But little did I know, life would throw an unexpected wrench into our great terrarium building plans. Early the next morning, it was the scheduled water test. I always get nervous with these water tests because I've had bad experiences with water walls leaking and have learned to never start a terrarium build with a water wall without first testing that water wall for leaks. And luckily, I didn't start the actual terrarium building prematurely because what I spotted made my heart drop to my stomach. Leaks. And not just inside the tank, but also outside the tank. The setup was not waterproof. I wasn't sure if it was my fault by not explaining that the tank needed to be waterproof, but perhaps the manufacturer thought he was building a completely dry unit. Like the display case wall, I also had them build in my room. But worrying and blaming was too late now.
Tu tío tiene pasta, la casa esa, well.
The display case wall, I also had them build in my room. But worrying and blaming was too late now. The entire thing was leaking, and leaking bad. I spotted where the leak was. It was an unsiliconed corner. So I removed the water and resiliconed everything, including...
Claro, la cosa es, yo muchas veces lo pienso, ¿no? Digo, para hacerte estos canales, ¿cómo nace la idea de hacerte estos canales? ¿Entendéis? Rollo, ¿me quiero dedicar a esto? O tengo dinero y tiempo. Que tienes que tener pasta y tiempo para hacer estas movidas, ¿eh? ¿A que sí? Hombre, a ver, hay canales de estos que tienen millones y millones de reproducciones. Y os recuerdo que en Estados Unidos el CPM es altísimo. O sea que se están llevando un pastizal, ¿eh? Pero claro, empezarán como hobby, ya, pero que el hobby te cuesta dinero. ¿Sabes? Que el hobby este de montarte un terrario, un no sé qué y tal, cuesta una pasta, coño. No es tan caro, estas cosas, lo más es la mano de obra. A ver, supongo que si es algo más modesto, más pequeño, ¿no? Supongo que será menos. Pero lo que está montando este tío, no veas. Claro, supongo que esto ya... Este tío es un loco de las hormigas, lleva años y antes no tenía tanta pasta. Claro, a ver, también entiendo que si es tu pasión y te gusta, es tu hobby, empiezas con algo pequeñito y si va creciendo, pues puedes también, ¿no? Supongo. Como me pasa a mí, ¿no? Con los videojuegos. Bueno, pues empecé ahí con el ordenador, tal, poco a poco, el micro de la cam. Hola a todos, chicos.
Inside and the outside of the water portion. It was good that we spotted the problem.
Mi primer pago de YouTube, $40, ¿eh? Nada mal.
But I had lost a day, as we would need to allow the silicone to dry before proceeding with a second water test. The next day, I proceeded with the water test. When it was full, I was happy to see that there were no leaks. I placed a tape at the watermark and would have to check back in a few hours to verify that it was indeed leak-free. I came back in a few hours, and this was what I saw. Okay, a little leak outside the tank. Inside, no leak, which was good. But there was still a leak somewhere. So once again, I drained all the water out and went in again to silicone a massive band this time over all joints, corners, and edges. My guess was that the silicone the company used was not for aquarium use. I've made this error in the past. If any of you guys are building your tanks, be sure to get silicone for aquariums. While waiting for the silicone to dry, I used this time to do things like clean the glass, as I knew the moment I started landscaping, it would get harder and harder to properly get in to wipe the glass. The next day, I was ready for the third leak test. Overnight, I had sucked up all the trapped water in the brace using paper towels. This was the moment of truth. So many items, tank decor, and plants were waiting on the sidelines.
Me hace gracia porque la gente siempre me flameaba con lo de items. Y es que soy casi bilingüe, loco.
For the moment I was ready to build, and I had hoped it would be today. I watched the paper towel like a hawk as the water began to fill up. When the tank was full, I checked the paper towel. No drip. It was dry, and this continued for the next several hours, which to me meant we had passed the leak test, which also meant that now the real fun was about to begin. Whoopee! First, we needed a drainage layer. I used lava rock and a lot of it. I also used pebble gravel and spread it throughout the tank floor. The purpose of a drainage layer is to have a place for water to sit while not having to waterlog the soils, which can be harmful to some plants, can drown important soil creatures, and produce anaerobic spots, which can be toxic for life. Next, charcoal. This is the carbon agent I would be using to absorb impurities. It also helps reduce odors that can develop over time in a terrarium, a must-have for our rainforest world. Next, pieces of rotting wood. This would help in giving the soil structure. provide nutrients to the soils,
Está guapo esto,
and act as a food for a number of soil creatures. I also added some large decayed leaves for a similar purpose. Finally, it was time to add soil. I ended up using 10 bags of soil. Now we want to give the plants within our vivarium the best chance to thrive.
Y la basura de
so
ayer,
this bag was the most potent of stuff. Poop from my goat Billy, aged for a few months, mixed with decayed leaves and grass. It stank. But once the stuff starts breaking down and releasing its nitrogen-rich compounds into the soils, our plants would rejoice and truly live their best lives. I then added a layer of leaf litter for more nutrients and more soil. And once the ground medium was set, it was now my favorite part, landscaping and planting. I started with the moss wall. Though the moss wall was dead, my vision for this moss wall was for it to be alive with plants growing on it. So I cut holes into the wall to accommodate various plants in pots, or stuck directly onto the moss epiphytically. When that was done, I began to work on planting the main tank. This process was a lengthy one and consisted of grabbing the supporting actors of the show, i.e., these asparagus ferns, which I love, and you'll see why when it's all finished, and rearranging them around until I was satisfied with the general look and shape they formed. Once that was done, I proceeded to continue adding, rearranging, and testing out the look of various other plants and decor.
Va a meter bichos
As you
también,
can see
claro,
here,
¿no?
I start with larger items first and make my way down to smaller items. I find it easier to work that way. What made this terrarium build extra challenging
Te estás
was
quedando
that
cuajado.
instead
Yo
of
no,
working
estoy
from
viendo todo,
above,
gente.
like I would any
Hoy estoy
ordinary
más
smaller
cansado de lo
tank,
normal,
I
Ayer
needed to
14
work
horas de streaming
blindly
ha sido duro.
from the rear of the tank,
Un poco cansado.
then walk
Estoy
around to
bien.
the front to see what I had done. I took a
¿Podéis mover
break
la
from
cara para
landscaping.
leer los subtítulos? Joder, gente, qué molestos sois, loco. Boh, qué locura.
Let's go, padre.
Habrá dado un dogma hoy. Después de esto, vamos a jugar, ¿vale?
To start
Vamos
grabbing the
a la
bottom of the
aventura
water
otra vez. A ver
area.
qué nos depara
I
ese
did this
mundo
so that
vasto.
in
¡Bum!
case water creatures that
Locura.
like to burrow did their thing, I wouldn't see glass at the bottom. Next, more soil and another moss wire piece here. This time, instead of a wall, it would form a cool mossy hill. More landscaping and decorating. Now, a lot of this was
Lo he oído de
intuitive.
Juan, que no lo he visto.
I've been
Lo habéis pasado antes.
terrariumscaping for animals since I was a young boy, so I had a lifetime of experience behind me, helping me decide what fit, what plant was too big, what shape of leaf might make it stand out, or complement another plant beside it. It takes some practice. But if you want some terrariumscaping advice, I suggest studying aquascapers, hobbyists who design aquariums, particularly using Japanese or Indonesian techniques and styles. Even though it's for fish and not land terrariums, in my opinion, aquascapers do nature tanks the best. It also helps to have someone
Mira
else
cómo le
come
está
in
quedando
with
ya,
fresh eyes to give some honest feedback about what looks cool and what could use some adjusting. I continue to scape well into the night.
¿Cuánto tardará en hacer esto en tiempo real, Aquí
The
pone
next
que...
morning,
Sí, aquí pone
I
que es
got
como una semana, una polla, ¿no?
Straight to work
Oh, sí.
on vines. Vines, oh vines. I've never had a tank large enough to incorporate real vines.
Un mes
but I've
mínimo,
always
mínimo.
wanted to. Now was my chance. I collected these vines,
Por
which
cierto,
are
en
actually
2 semanas
heirlooms
tenemos-
from a banyan tree in my neighborhood. I always felt
Tenemos
they
esto,
looked
Pokémon.
awesome and was happy to give them a try in our tank. Now I thought situating vines in an aesthetically attractive manner would be easy, no different from arranging branches in a terrarium. But let me tell you, I was wrong. Arranging vines in a pleasing and natural-looking way was hard. It took me the entire morning and afternoon to come up with a vine configuration that looked natural
A mí esto me
and would
mola,
be
es que
an
me
effective
flipa.
climbing
Es un juego muy
space
bonito,
for
loco.
arboreal animals. When that
Qué
was
juego
done,
grande y
it was
próximo.
time for finishing touches.
No sabría decirte,
Almost
grande.
done. Time to add gravel to the water area, then water, then stick moss onto the rock wall.
¿Cuál es el
And
próximo
after
tocho,
a
gente?
total of 5 whole days of working on this tank,
El Stellar
this
Blade.
was what the
Stellar
final
Blade
result
habrá serie y promo, 2x1. Boh.
looked like. AC family, behold, the slice of tropical cloud forest I call Pandora.
Como mola,
Now, before I show you all the neat and exciting
Fíjate la que ha
details
liado,
of this tank as a terrarium build, I want all of us to first become an ant for a second and have an epic exploratory walk through these vast territories as a tiny creature for greatest effect. Let's go! Pandora is a magnificent tropical and humid paradise for any jungle creature that might have the chance to walk its mossy soils. With it being a cloud forest, humidity is high, which means heaven for moss, which carpets many areas of this rainforest terrain. Now, if you're having problems seeing things right now, don't worry. It's just while the cloud which blows through here every morning and evening floats through to hydrate the lands. It will be gone shortly. Now, the reason I chose to construct a cloud forest over any ordinary forest is because cloud forests, meaning forests usually at the saddles of mountains that retain a lot of moisture from settling clouds, happen to be among the most biodiversity-rich ecosystems in the world. Cloud forests are my favorite forests with incredible ecosystems. Hence, Pandora here. Pandora also sports a peaceful waterfall fed from a mountain spring that trickles into the opening of an underground cave water system. What a world these lands would be for our beloved creatures moving in. All right, and now to check out these lands as humans. The foggy clouds are produced by a fog machine, which pumps the fog in every few hours to ensure the lands stay hydrated. The tank looks pretty epic from the front.
Está muy guay, ¿eh?
This is my favorite angle of the tank. And check out the back. I just couldn't stop staring. Have a look.
Yo estoy viendo cómo ha creado un...
It's insane to watch and
terrario
looks super real with the clouds.
Está guapo.
But let's have the clouds go, shall we? I have a fan on a timer.
Pero no va a meter vida en plan de bichillos y eso, ¿o qué?
But I'll use that now. The mist takes a moment to dissipate.
¿Mete bichillos o no? Sí, ¿no? Para el final te lo deja, cabrón.
And voila.
Va a meter a su gato.
Pandora.
No jodas.
After the fog clearing. What do you think?
Se ve súper bonito, ¿eh?
So let's start with the underground river cave opening. It's stocked with floating water lettuce, mosses, and fed, as mentioned, from a trickling waterfall from our mossy and ornately planted rock wall. Oh, and I can't wait to stock this cave water system with aquatic life.
Eso,
I also added a stick to help rescue any animals or insects falling in. They could also grab on to the various banyan roots that go into the water. Our cloud forest floor is adorned with carpets of various species of moss.
No sé cómo va el tema de hoy,
as mentioned,
pero no estoy
offer the
jugando.
perfect haven for moss to grow. In fact, cloud forests are also known as mossy forests, seeing as they tend to be abundant in moss growing on the ground and vegetation. I find they look really pretty, give any tank that signature forest feel, and I hope they establish themselves in this tank. Crossing fingers.
Un saludito.
And what did I say about our star tree stump, huh? It stands boldly as a focal point from which the eyes begin to wander. Hello, Golden Ratio. Our mossy wall is adorned with telangias, bromeliads, and climbing ficus plumila, which I'm hoping will totally cover this mossy wall over time. Same goes for this plant, which often takes over my terrariums in no time. But probably my favorite plants within this tank are the asparagus ferns, the supporting actors. See how nice they look? I find they always look stunning, paired with wood, and kinda look like mini bamboo trees. Check out this one, which I found has a long stalk that I could hang from above. I love it so much.
¿Dónde dice que lo encontró? ¿Del vecino también?
Other plants worth noting are these nerve plants, which make great terrarium additions, this bright yellow-green philodendron, which adds an awesome pop of color, some wild baby plants, which were growing from a clump of dirt that I found in the forest in my yard. Not sure what species they are, but we'll see. And clumps of Spanish moss, which hung beautifully from the canopy above.
España.
Which brings us now to the vines. Oh, the vines.
Llevo una
Took
cuajada
forever to
histórica,
get them to look just right.
un rebulo
They
algo.
entangle through each other high above the lands. There's a UV and heat basking spot for any reptile requiring sunlight. But my favorite are these banyan tree air roots. Have a look at them. I love the look of the air roots. They add such a cool aesthetic to our tropical rainforest. They're like nature's curtains.
Un caracol se la
Check
gozaría
out the
aquí,
view from this
seguramente, ¿no?
side. Doesn't it look like a true slice of rainforest? I can honestly sit here for hours staring.
Es que está guay,
Terrariums are so therapeutic. Now I made sure that there were lots and lots of places for animals to hide, find homes, explore, etc. that offer differing microclimates than the main living area. Let me show you. Behind the mossy wall is mostly
Behind the
space,
musgo.
so creatures can make
Muchas
their way back
gracias.
there and hide if they want. It's also quite humid back there too. I also allowed for the formation of an underground cave beneath the wooden
¿Qué es ese
stool.
mote?
Un saludito, padre.
Pero ese mote, ¿quién lo ha puesto? No, pero a mí no me sale ese. No sé. ¿Qué cojones?
On which the tree stump sits. I attached the rock wall using long brackets so that creatures could wedge themselves into the
global, lo
soft,
cambian
tighter,
ellos.
mossy
Ah,
areas
entiendo.
behind the wall, if they so chose. And my personal favorite, this neat cave, which leads into a huge, darkened dome beneath this moss hill. There's actually a lot of shadowy places and niches creatures could retreat to and occupy. Places for creatures to hide and get away.
¡Qué cabrón!
would
¿Cuándo
be
vas a meter los
important
bichos?
once the
Pero si se
various
acaba ya el
animals
vídeo.
begin living together.
¿Qué es lo que más me
Daisy
gusta a mí,
family?
loco?
That was when I
¿En serio?
spotted a tiny movement. Do you see it? A tiny jumping spider dangled from a thread
Y ahora
of its
cierra el vídeo
lifeline
con sus santos
silk.
cojones.
It looked
Se
around
queda
these
esto con
vast
todo.
lands in awe. I bet it was introduced here through one of the plants. Hello, little guy. Welcome to Pandora. You would have an utter feast of insects to eat very soon.
Ah, que es
I
otra
think
serie de
you could
vídeos. Es
feel a
poco a
slight
poco,
change
claro. Este cabrón te saca. Que se cabrón.
In the air, and that something major was coming. The humid clouds were rolling in again. And AC family,
Si esto se acaba
we've
ya.
already seen the cool clouds of our cloud
O
rainforest.
sea, es un vídeo que está muy guapo, ¿eh? Pero en el siguiente, media hora hablando
But it wouldn't
con
truly
la
be a
cacharra esta.
rainforest
Y te mete otro.
without rain. Pandora's tropical montane
Claro, claro, es
climate
una serie, ¿no?
consisted of frequent rain drizzles. Before escaping, I made sure to outfit the
Hay que
entire
pagar el
setup
tronco del vecino.
with an irrigation system. I also had to modify the nozzles a bit, so the rain produced would better mimic an actual cloud rainforest shower, falling lightly as a sort of mist, but also as droplets falling from the tall trees high above the canopy. The raindrops fell magically onto our precious clumps of moss below. I love storm watching, and I just loved watching
Está
it
muy guay.
rain within our cloud rainforest kingdom of Pandora.
Hostia puta, bueno.
And that AC family was how
Ahora hablamos
I
de una
built
cosa.
a giant cloud rainforest within glass. What do you guys think of it? I have honestly been
Está guapo, pero que pensaba que ya se meten los bichillos, loco. Es el número 1 esto. Hace 3 meses, 1 millón de reproducciones. Yo también lo estiraría, no te jode.
staring at it non-stop since it was built yesterday. And I felt honored to have such a stunning slice of nature that we could look into and visit anytime we wanted within the Antiverse. It made me come to better appreciate the magnificence, the design, the complexity of the natural world and climate. Speaking of climate, I also plan on changing the frequency settings on the fog and rain to mimic the natural wet and dry seasons through the year. I think it would be interesting to see how the inhabitants within Pandora react to these changes. But guys, this brings me now to the best part. This vivarium, of course, was incomplete. It already had a tiny spider, but I've been waiting for this very moment for literal months. Now that all the flora of our vivarium was in place, it was time for the next step of our ultimate ecosystem vivarium building process. You guessed it, AC family. It was time to add the fauna. Hope you can subscribe to the channel as we upload every Saturday at 8 a.m. Eastern.
Vale, suficiente. Vamos. Gente. El PV del
Este
Overwatch
canal tiene
2 se ha
videos
cancelado
guapos,
totalmente.
Interesantes, que no es mondongo.
Hostia, pero
Lo
esto es
juro.
una locura, ¿no? La que han liado. Entonces, ¿qué cojones han hecho? O sea, ¿qué coño ha sido esto? Esto es un timo histórico, ¿no? No entiendo nada. Pero no estaba cancelado, no. Estaba
Hola,
cancelado
buenas
una
tardes,
movida.
panfleto.
No todo, ¿eh?
Hoy día cumplimos unos bellísimos 29 meses que espero que, como me prometiste, los celebremos con un buen Hollow Knight, pero como sé que no lo harás, al menos vuelve a dejarte esa barbita de chivo tan facherita que tenías ahí.
Es
Dios
raro
mío.
esto, ¿no, gente? O sea, es una troleada histórica. Coño, es que es literalmente el mismo juego, ¿qué coño? Joder. Vale, pero quita esto de juego raro que me habéis pasado. Vale, chicos, pues mira, vamos a hacer una cosita, va. Vamos a dar un poquito al Dragon Dogma. Último try. Esta noche se decide el destino de esta maravillosa serie, que puede llegar a su fin, o no. Dijeron que el GTA 6 se podría retrasar hasta el 2026. Algo he visto así.
Empanadas.
Qué pesadito eres, Given. Qué pesado, media hora, castigado, loco. Joder, me llevas spameando el vídeo del Honkai y es esa puta mierda. Es que eres gilipollas, si tú no sabes ni lo que es un gacha. Joder. La cojada que llevas, loco.
allowing her to
Ah, mira, esto es para ver otro capítulo. Nos vemos uno cada día, ya estaría. Vale, a ver, chicos. A ver. Pon cuando añada los bichos. Ya, y me tiro aquí 3 horas viendo los vídeos, gente. A ver. Vale, voy a cerrar esto. Empanadas. Vale, gente. Vamos a ver. Título de clickbait. Título perrón. Vale. Noche de disfrute. Seguimos con esta wea. Voy a poner y ya está, ¿no? ¿O qué? Hostia, es el anti-clickbait, ¿no? Anti-clickbait. Seguimos con esta wea. ¿Qué cojones es esto? ¿No te parece normal? ¿No te parece que...? No, sí, lo de los 60 FPS en Play. Pues es que está mal optimizado.
Hola chat guato, no aquí un chistecito. ¿Cómo se dice espejo en chino? Ahí doy yo X de así.
Título pocho, ahora lo cambiamos.
Cuencro, necesitamos bichos sí o sí. ¿Sí? ¿Sí o sí? ¿Sí? ¿Sí o sí? ¿Sí?
Me estoy volviendo
El
loco.
bicho sí.
Os recuerdo que el domingo vamos a darle full, al Elden Ring. Le vamos a dar todo el día. Domingo malaria, no lo sé. Paga 1 euro para iniciar Dragon Dogma. Voy. A ver si puedo. Mañana directo, sí, por la noche. En principio también. Último try a Dragon Dogma 2. ¿Volará alto? Hostias, qué título de pro, ¿no? ¡Oh! Barbaridad, loco. Qué locura.